I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Compelling Speech, The Stammering Enigma, no other than Mr. Sean B.W. Parker. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Sean.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
And can you please introduce yourself?
Certainly. I'm a English writer and artist, and I'm also a stammerer, person who stammers, or I have been since I was 5, and it's an affliction that comes and goes. And this is my kind of compelling speech. The Stammering Enigma is my 8th book, and so I'm happy to talk to you all about it and to explain what's inside it.
Compelling speech, the stammering enigma. How did you crafted it?
I actually wrote this one in uh, during lockdown a couple of years ago, when I was actually living in the Dartmoor here in England in the southwest, and I was unable to access much other services. So I decided, being a writer, I decided to do some sort of an autobiography situation, but I wanted a focus for it, which wasn't about just life. And the thing that I know about most is stammering. And in 2013, I'd given a TED talk called "The Stammering in Creativity" in Istanbul whilst I was living there, and I decided to update that with everything I'd learned since and the life experiences that go into it. So in that time in lockdown, I honed all those experiences from the 10 years of teaching in Istanbul and the TED talk into how it feels to be a stammerer, the cultural context of that, and how it comes and goes. And that's what the book is. It's quite short. It's kind of in about 100 pages. So it's a tight little autobiography, basically.
So compelling speech is your own experiences.
Yes, essentially, it's about experience of this life, but also there are things. It's a humorous book too, and it's a cultural memoir because before doing it, I was a writer in culture and music. I still am. So I actually enjoy getting all those external things into it, not just all about how one feels, but also about the reasons things happen. So what I attempted to do was to combine all those things into a book to keep the listener interested and to keep myself interested too.
What are your struggles in writing compelling speech?
Struggles. It's it always looks like quite a mountain to have to accumulate a bunch of experiences into a manuscript, which is then compelling to others to read. You're talking about things that you know, and you need to make that accessible to the public. You don't want to bore them, and you don't want to think you're self-pitying. You want to analyze it also without boring them, without being too sciencey. I'm not too sciencey, and so the challenge is just the craft of writing, how to make something quite unusual and subjective to a person or to 1% of people, to be communicable to a larger audience. I think I succeeded with it. I hope so. I'm quite proud of it.
So you told us that you're stammering your experiences at the age of 5. How did you manage it?
Yeah, that's when it started to show itself. Um, I, being 5, I didn't care. I was just existing because that's what 5-year-olds do. It was much more concerning to my parents. And on the whole, these things do go away in children, but some they don't. And it didn't for me. And it hung around due to stubbornness or apparently genetics as well. So it's not, there's a lot of this that isn't in the control of the parents, and that has to be acknowledged. They have to acknowledge that it's not their fault. Um, but there are things they can do to help And then as the stammerer gets older, there's things that they can do to help themselves as well. So it becomes difficult and intimidating, but there are also kind of ways in which it gets better as you get older, and there are ways that you can mitigate the stammer in your own mouth, which is what I tried to talk about in the book.
So stammering is a part of our genetics individually.
It's a large part. It's a difficult thing to come down to any cause of anything like this, anything neurological, because it's still such an unexplored universe of the internal body. But I go in the book to this kind of, it's a 30% genetics, the 30% upbringing, the family around you, and a 30% kind of cosmology, or the person that you are, your soul, stardust. So there's this unexplored part of us. I think there's enough human anecdotal evidence for this to include it in the book, in the sense of there are things about us that we do not understand, and that's what the soul is. And the stammer is also embedded in there somewhere. It kind of talks to all those different parts. So yeah, I've got a unique kind of take on that question of causes in it.
What do you think? What happened to you as you grow up? The stammering will go away. So what happened to you then?
It can for some, and for others it doesn't. And if they don't, they might end up writing a book about it. So there's a lot of kids, like probably up to 15%, who have some kind of a disfluency in childhood, and it goes away, and it's like a good. Everyone forgets about it, or it doesn't become a thing. Um, for me, it did actually go away for a year when I was 16, and I started to, and I joined a band, a grunge band, and I was a singer and a guitarist in that band. And that expression, for some reason, and the confidence it gave, did put the stammer into the back seat, or it just evaporated it to a situation that it is now, which is like it's always still there, and I don't have a problem with it being there, accepting that as part of life. Um, but it went, because of singing and because of being in charge of a band, I suppose, into being in the background. Then it came back a year later, for I don't know what reasons, but adolescence, I guess. And so yeah, it's been there ever since. It was really bad at 29, and I went to get speech therapy in order that I could become a teacher.
Okay, sounds interesting, Mr. Sean. But before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in Turkey because you mentioned you live in Turkey.
Mm.
Yes, in Istanbul, I get 50% audience share.
Oh,
Trabzon at
oh,
27%. Guamashen at 8%. Kosaeli at 5%. Gaziantep at 5%. Manisa at 2%. Ankara in capital is 2%. Tekirdağ at 1%, Balu at 1%, and last but not the least, Konya 1%. Thank you so much, Turkey, for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world, like Mr. Sean B.W. Parker. So, Mr. Sean, what age did you realize that you are good in writing?
oh. Probably about 14. I understood that I enjoyed writing. Started to write poems and the lyrics to songs for that band I mentioned, and got a joy out of that. And didn't know at that point that this was a lifelong craft that would get better and better. And it has proved to be so. That's never gone away. There's always been either songs, poems, cultural writing, uh, kind of cultural reviews, books, essays, all these kind of plays. I enjoy every form. So except for copywriting for advertising as a bit of a, I've done that as well. So every area of this is exciting, and it gets, as I say, it gets better and better, which is a surprise. Your skills get more honed, and you don't realize they are. They just pop out in your pen, in your keyboard, in the back of your mind, and it's yeah. So yeah.
Yes, and I learned that Ed Sheeran, when he's still young, do a lot of his stutter too. But I think I learned that he did learn to recite Eminem song. Who is your favorite author? Who influenced you the most?
uh, that's difficult. There's a huge range of these people, but I shan't go through all of them. That's not very fair. Um, from the dead, probably Mr. George Orwell, and as a novelist, of course, The Down and Out in Paris and London isn't as well known as Animal Farm and 1984, which are huge classics, but it's my favourite. It's a short novella about being homeless by accident, or is it on purpose? I don't know. But it's a brilliantly written short book about how to survive on your own soul. And also in the area of the dead, Mr. Dylan Thomas, the poet and playwright from Wales, Swansea, is a massive influence. His poetry did kind of properly affect me as a younger man. There's a lot of poetry that you read and go, well, that's good, but it doesn't really dig in. But Dylan Thomas's poems did dig in just because of the sheer music of them. Incredibly beautiful way of looking at English as a Welshman, as he was, and it just the way he puts the things together is just like a painting. So it's exciting to read him from the world of the dead. And then from now, from the living writers, Steven Pinker, the American neuroscientist and Harvard professor, is an absolutely inspiring guy because he looks at facts and statistics that we're surrounded with in the culture wars, and he goes to the truth of them. And he also describes the reasons that they're not truthful sometimes, or that we feel that everybody feels bad, even though the stats are good, is basically his line. And he explains that in such a wonderful way. And he's in America, but over in Britain, to finish off, Joanna Williams of Spiked and The Spectator and the CIEO think tank is my current, probably active favourite, who just takes apart culture war issues of the woke and things like that in the most pragmatic, sensible. And she's a woman, of course, so she comes from that area of post-feminism in a very, very intelligent way. So yeah, those four: Dylan Thomas, George Orwell, Steven Pinker, and Joanna Williams. And there's millions more, but thank you for the question.
Very well said, Mr. Sean. So, if you describe their writing, what is it or what are they?
Of if we go back then to George Orwell, he talks about the world in his context, which was into war, about almost 100 years ago now, but how authoritarianism can easily slip into everyday life, not necessarily by force, just by gradually. And almost all of his books imply of the creeping authoritarianism that we're actually witnessing now. And I don't want to go down any rabbit holes because I consider myself kind of a part of the mainstream largely, but the mainstream is starting to realize the rabbit holes aren't entirely nonsense. And so we're very concerned about creeping woke, and the liberals, like I consider myself to be a liberal, but the liberals are actually the ones who are being authoritarian over the traditionalists. And there's a lot of this concern out there about that. And but Mr. Orwell was talking about that in 1984 in Animal Farm 70, 80 years ago. And his books have just become like text of prediction now. And that's quite, so it's exciting to read because of that, and slightly alarming too that no one seems to realize that if they haven't read it.
Definitely. So, did you get those criteria in your writing or characteristic in your writing?
I'm sure that they've seeped through somehow, especially in the cultural studies things that I write about. Compelling speech, the title obviously has a nod to compelling speech in the sort of trans debates here across the West, where if you work for a company, well, almost in every sort of social situation, if a man decides he's a woman and I don't agree with that, and I don't call him a woman or by his new name, then somehow I am the aggressor. That's called compelling speech, and it's a problem. And so, what's happening with the stammer is I'm compelling my own speech to come out quite a lot of the time, sometimes. but also what's happening in society is that the state is compelling people to speak in a way that it feels proper, and that's against the libertarian urge, which I support, the Enlightenment libertarian urge. So,
That'd be awesome, Mr. Sean. So, what are your short term and long term goals in writing?
uh, short term, being I'm being involved in a collection of justice reform writings by an academic called Suzanne Tupling, who is got a book out called Honestly. She's about to publish that in the new academic year, and I've got a story about justice reform in that book, quite a long short story. So that's very short term. Um, Next summer, I'm going to publish uh, Panopticon. I didn't choose a name I could say very well. Panopticon, which is a collection of poems from the criminal justice system. So that will be coming out next summer. So that's quite in the short term. Kind of in the long term, I have a novel idea, and I'll keep doing all of the writing that I do for False Allegations Watch and organisations like this, and for CEIEO as well, about culture and justice, because I keep up with these things in the way that Mr. Orwell would.
Very well said, Mr. Sean. But before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of the best restaurant in downtown Toronto. Please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about grissini people, one of the trademark of Italian cuisine. So please do listen. Food 101 plus one more. Our books are out. Not only one, but 7 volumes are our Food 101, Volume 1 Basics. Please do grab a copy, available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. So please do support my Food 101 and my books, people. So, Mr. Sean, what are your preparation in writing compelling speech, the stammering enigma?
You know, I have a lot of notes that I collect over the years on laptop, in handwritten, everything, and I just get them all together, and I go through them systematically to see what's good and what's not with the fresh eyes, and then I edit them into things that are still compelling now, and that's what I did then. Though because I was up in Dartmoor there, I didn't have access to the internet, and I didn't have anything like this, so it was all about handwritten notes. So I got them all together, and I will go to the kind of the word processor that we had there, and just try and shuffle through them and put them together that way. And yeah, but I would do that every morning for a couple of hours, from like kind of nine till lunchtime, and did that for about a year, I guess. Yeah.
So, how many days or month you wrote this book?
I think this took about 6 months, I think. Yeah, of that kind of sort of time scale. It was about twice as long as what it came out to with 100 pages. It was about 200 or something like that. But I'm sort of my own work, and to, as I say, get it to something which is more snappy for the audience to have in mind. So yeah, 6 months.
And according to Mr. F.P. Nelson, this book will not disappoint you. So, what are the elements that you put in the book itself that the reader will not disappoint?
Well, I hope that it's, as I was saying earlier, that it's kind of written in a non-scientific way, but is also authoritative, so that I do know what I'm talking about with speech therapy and kind of the neurological origins and things like that. But I don't cloud the writing with that, because there are other people who can do it better. So I attempt to. Hopefully, the audience won't be disappointed, because I go from the science of things very quickly to the culture of things, and also to how things feel within the same chapter. So bang, 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 and so there'll be hopefully kind of according to that review that you mentioned, FP Nelson. Yeah, he got it totally right on that, how it skips forward. And it does skip forward in a hopefully compelling way.
Okay, and according to the reader 5113, informative and engaging book on stammering. So give us an insight or information that you wrote in the book.
Um, well, you talked about Mr. Sheeran just earlier on, who is a newcomer to outing himself as a stammerer just a couple of years ago, wasn't it? And it's always good to hear that, and that's how he considers himself. You can't hear anything of it in his speech anymore, possibly because of his confidence in success of what's happened. Um, I talk about I don't talk about him because he talked about that after I'd written the book. But there are more characters like Mr. Rowan Atkinson, and who's the Blackadder and Mr. Bean, of course, and he's got a famous stammer, which is the reason that he went quiet for Mr. Bean. He didn't want the stress of it as he was acting anymore. And also the King's Speech sort of film, which is a wonderful film. I didn't watch it at the time, but I watched it about sort of 10 years later, and I was so touched by how good it was and how well the stammer was acted and the effect it had on a powerful family and their expectations of who they are, and how it's actually it's a very honest sort of disability, or whatever we want to call it, because there's no hiding from it. It's out there and it outs you, and that's why the Stammering Pride sort of movement is so important, because they say be yourself, be happy about it. In this book, I say yes, be yourself, be happy about it, but also if you do get fluent, or if you speak easier, that's also fine, and to not be unhappy about that part either. It's okay to get better, you know.
Yes, and according to M Dog, another fabulous book from a very gifted author.
Yes, that was very nice to read. Of course, all of those reviews. Very
So, how fabulous the book it is.
well. That's up to the reader to decide. I'm not a salesman of my own work very much. I'm British, you know, so we don't really do that very well. But if if the person wants to have a read and then they want to leave a review on Amazon, that's obviously what it's all about, and it's very happily received and read, and it helps for the exposure of the book to carry on and to write another one. So yeah.
Yes, that'd be awesome. Compelling speech, the stammering Enigma. What do you think the flaws?
Oh, absolutely nothing. It's a work of stunning genius. No, not really. The flaws are that I am not a specialist as much as I would like to be in lots of things in life. I have lots of interests and I go from one to the other. I do it with as much intensity and understanding as I can. But if I get bored, I kind of go on to another subject, which does interest me, to keep things creative and fresh. So I think in this book, I'm actually a bit more into a subject than I have been in a lot of my other books. So it's hard to say what are things kind of problems are, or for flaws. It will be up to the reader, and I'll be interested to hear them. The review there from Stammer, which is the organisation British Stammering Association, he did a great review, which is very balanced in that I can be. He kind of pointed out that I'm kind of critical of certain things in disability rights activism, and I am. So, but I don't think that's a flaw. I think it's objectivity and critique, and it's keeping things real, which is very important to me.
Very well said, Mr. Sean, and thank you, Lisa Notes, for giving me my lesson score of 24 and the top 10% popular show globally. Thank you so much. Compelling speech, this time in Enigma. If you go back and revise the book itself, which part of the book you want to revise?
Ooh, what a question. I'm happy with it as it is, because if a thing's out there, it has its own identity past what I've done to it and how I've designed it. So I'm happy enough with it. There's probably a couple of typos in there, but I don't let these things keep me awake at night. I'm not that pedantic. So nothing. I wouldn't revise anything, Daniel.
Okay, compelling speech, this Stammering Enigma. What are the thoughts that you shared to the book that make your readers read again?
Um, I hope that the reader will enjoy the snappiness of the thing, that it does go from thought to thought, but in a powerful way. And it talks about the subject of stammering, but it talks about the subject of uh, the politics around the person who stammers and how they are seen by others, and lots of controversies about speech therapy itself over the years. So, if they like all that kind of thing, the thing itself and how it's received and culture, they're going to enjoy it, I think, as the reviews have pointed out.
Yes, indeed. Compelling speech, this Stammering Enigma. Do you have another option for the title of your book?
Another option for the title.
Yes.
Uh, it was going to be called Stammering and Culture for a couple of years, but I thought that was a bit dry, so I went with compelling speech because of things that have happened in the culture wars a bit more recently, and because it was on my mind. So, and it also makes sense. So yeah.
What will be your advice for those people having experienced stammering right now?
Um, if it's for themselves, it's that depending on their age and the way they stammer, because people stammer in different ways, would be to just accept the person that you are does this, but it isn't the person that you are. It's not you. It's what you do, and it's just a. If that gets better, it's great, and if it doesn't, it doesn't matter. It will. There are ways to modify it as you get older and more relaxed in not caring about things so much, and all the little tricks that you have with having a lever that gets you into a word, a replacement. That's not a problem. It's not a bad thing to have a little replacement going on. I've got lots of them, and they don't become their own ticks from my experience. So whatever works is what I say.
How did you modify your stammering?
Um, there's something called the voluntary stammering, where if you can see kind of sounds and letters coming towards you, which you won't have a problem with, to deliberately stammer on them, because then that takes the pressure away from the thing that you will stammer on. So what happens is it's a leveling of what you're doing. So if you're deliberately stammering all the time, you actually create, like I'm doing now, a new kind of fluency, which is easier for you. Basically, it's all about decompressing the stammer, just de-stressing it, and that's a brilliant way of doing it. Just one example.
Very well said, Mr. Sean. So, can you please invite our listeners to buy all your books?
I certainly can. To buy all my books by doing a Google search of Sean B.W. Parker, and they can see all my 8 on there. And compelling speech is there last, and do just go in and buy it and enjoy the physical thing itself. It's always good to have physical in your hands, you know.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Sean because this book is phenomenal. It helps people that is having stammering on their daily lives. How Mr. Sean put the struggles to make the stammering better and better as he go to adult age.
Absolutely, Daniel. Very well said yourself. I would also like to say hello to Turkey myself. Istanbul is my second home. I love that city and the Turkish people in general. So, merhaba, nasılsın, teşekkürler, and I'll look forward to speaking to you on Wednesday as well.
Yes, Marhaba Turkey. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. Mr. Sean, thank you for your time.
Okay, man. Later.
Very well, people. See you soon.